On this episode of Technicolor Blood, rumors galore for future Marvel movies, and Disney may be rebooting a very popular franchise.
George Miller makes a thing, and Aaron Sorkin makes a thing.
Technicolor Blood starts right now. Technicolor Blood, we are back again. We are happy you're here. I'm Chris. I'm here with Terrence. How you doing, Terrence?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm also happy that people are here.
The few of you that are here, we're happy that you're here. Okay, so what have you watched since we last spoke, Terrence? I will throw out a couple that I've seen in the last week or so. One was the sort of side piece Marvel movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we also, to sort of get in the mood for Halloween, we started Haunting on Hill House on Netflix.
I've seen both of those things, and well, I should say that like you, I've started watching Haunting on Hill House in preparation for Halloween. Yeah, so I'm about 2 episodes deep into that show, and man, it is television.
How many more episodes deep do you think you're going to get? It doesn't sound like a lot.
Okay, so the reason that I chose to start this show is because it's been a really long time since a television show has lit up my social media feeds the way this one has. This one seems to have a lot of buzz going on. I think a lot of people are just watching it in preparation for Halloween. So sure. I wanted to check it out and see, what it was getting everyone excited. So I'm going to keep watching it in the hope that there is a thing at some point down the run of the show that really hooks me and is a reason for people to be excited about it. But I mean, so far it's television.
Yeah, I'll be honest. We actually bailed on it after the very first segment before the opening credits. But like you,
that is an early ripcord.
I felt like it's one of those things where the whole point of the opening segment of a TV show is to hook you,
right,
and get you to continue to watch it. Mm-hmm. And when that moment happened where the opening credits started, I just kind of said, "Is that the hook? Is that it?" So we bailed. But like you, I started seeing it start torching my social media timeline. So I thought, okay, maybe we pulled the ripcord a little bit too early on this. And we went back and started watching it. I think we're 4 or 5 episodes in now. And I'm actually enjoying it, for what it is. Right. It's just a fun kind of Halloween thing. I like what they're trying to do on a couple of levels. They do a lot of these wide establishing shots of rooms in this house to try to get you to look around the room to find out things going on in the shadows. Mm-hmm. All the while sort of ignoring some of the issues I have with acting.
Yeah, it's a rough cast.
Yeah, and the other thing that stuck out about this, at least in the negative for me, is there's a lot of child actors, and that's fine. I know you have to have child actors, but there's a certain way to direct and especially edit child actors. And there's a strange thing that happens in this show where the kids have these long monologuing set pieces. Well, not monologuing, but there's 2 of them talking back and forth for extended periods of time for long shots. And when they're kid actors, I'm sorry, but if they each have 20 lines they deliver in this long scene, some of them are going to really, really hit the wrong way, and that has happened a lot.
Yeah, and you can tell that they're having to film a lot of takes and then just sort of piece it together. Yeah. And so it's very disjointed.
That doesn't get better.
Yeah. Okay.
that there's an episode a little further into the season where they stitch so many Steadicam shots together. I want to say, I didn't really notice it at first, so I'm not likely to go back and rewatch the episode, but I think maybe they tried to do a thing where the entire episode was one long shot. Which involved a lot of swinging around corners on a Steadicam, and no.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of audiences love that. I remember when everyone lost their mind over the hallway fight in the first season of Daredevil.
Right.
And I was watching that, and it was clear that was like 30 takes pieced together, but people were losing their mind that it was this one long continuous shot.
It's super impressive when it's an actual technical achievement. Where they don't actually piece things together like the infamous Magnolia shot.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm off the cuff. I would forget if I'd started to name more, so I'm just going to stop right there because there's so many. But that's the one that just popped into my head instantly. But there's tons that actually do that in an impressive manner. But this is more of a bit of a trick.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned that you watched Ant-Man and Wasp.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on that one?
I liked the first one. I liked the second one too. It was fine. It was fun. I like Evangeline Lilly a lot. Who doesn't like Paul Rudd? I think you have to like Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
it's one of those requirements.
Without question,
movie watching.
He's the best and maybe only good thing about those Ant-Man movies.
Yeah, they kind of fall into the I instantly forgot it category for me. And I don't, when I'm watching the other Marvel movies, I'm trying to kind of keep in mind, how this affects the whole series and how the characters intertwine. And watching Ant-Man and the Wasp and the original Ant-Man, I don't really think about that too much. I just kind of turn my brain off and have fun. I guess that's what I should be doing with all comic book movies. But you seem to want to bring up, when we talked about this real briefly, about how it actually is tying into the future movies.
Well, I mean, a lot of that just comes from the two kind of bonus scenes that they tack on during the credits. And, obviously one of them shows the rest of the cast doing that thing that half the population of the universe does at the end of the first
right,
Infinity War.
That's right.
But then, there's also that like real kind of clunker line that Paul Rudd, I guess he doesn't deliver it. I guess it's Evangeline Lilly, or no, it's Michelle Pfeiffer, I guess, talking to Paul Rudd, where, he's about to go journey into the quantum zone or whatever, which allows him to survive the thing that happens. But as he's leaving, she's like, be careful not to do this. And then the other thing she says is, and be careful not to fall into a time vortex. And there's like this big highlighter and arrow pointing at that line. And you're like, oh, gee, I wonder if that's going to play a part in the next Infinity War film. And
yeah,
I think it's pretty clear that that's, the first Lego block in the Lego blocks that will lead to the resolution of that film and resetting the Marvel universe.
Yeah. I kept waiting for the scene where someone gets trapped in the building that they keep shrinking.
Oh yeah, that would have been fantastic.
Because, once they shrink the building, it's not like they treat it with any, like as if it's fragile. They just kind of throw it in the back of the van. Meanwhile, everything in that building is getting absolutely destroyed. Anyway.
Again, yeah, you're definitely supposed to turn your brain off.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just having fun with it. All right. So speaking of Marvel, we'll start off our news segment with some rumored movies coming out for their 2020 slate. And again, rumors. The first one is the Black Widow movie, which we've talked about before, which is beyond rumor at this point. It's happening, but I guess the rumor is that that's going to be hitting in 2020. And all signs point towards this being another origin story type of movie, which I guess is what it was always supposed to be. And so that one's coming out. I think we've talked about that before. I don't know if you have anything new to add to that, other than it's good that it's come out in 2020 and not 2-3 years after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's way past time for them to give that character her own film.
Yeah, and the other one is rumored to be the Eternals, which is apparently about the celestial beings that are involved in the Marvel comic universe. And I'm not super versed in all that, but from what I understand, the main hero in Captain Marvel is a celestial, so this will apparently tell the story. Apparently, it takes place millions of years ago, and it may or may not involve sort of the origin story of the Infinity Stones.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty clear that Marvel's strategy here is, step one was introducing the broader universe through the lens of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then you get introduced to this magical universe through Doctor Strange. And now we're going into this, cosmic universe with the Eternals. They're pulling the focus of their universe away from Earth and away from kind of basic superheroes like Spider-Man and the Hulk and Captain America. And I have to assume that some part of that is coming from the fact that those core actors their contracts are all coming up.
Yeah.
And there's, heavy speculation at this point that like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and probably Chris Hemsworth are going to move away from those characters, whether or not they're going to retire the characters or recast them or what, we don't know. But even if they do choose to recast them, I got to think that they're going to want to put some distance between the current iterations with those super popular actors and then whoever they replace them with. So I think the Marvel cinematic universe is moving away from Earth and incorporating these like bigger, oversized, overscaled adventures to them. And that's fine. I'm sure that'll be all hugely successful for them. But as we've moved more toward that, my interest in the films has, maybe not stayed at the same heightened level.
I think they need to be real careful with this.
Yeah.
They've had this amazing run of success, and that's tied to, pretty good screenplays, good directors, very excellent casting.
Yes.
And those guys and those cast members playing their roles to a T. Now they're starting to branch out a little bit. In that old saying, it's a short walk from the penthouse to the outhouse. They need to watch out before this thing gets away from them. And obviously we have to implicitly trust them with as well as they've done before. But just some of the rumored synopses that I'm seeing of some of these movies coming up, I mean, like you said, they're far less intriguing to me. And when you lose the core existence of those iconic superheroes in those movies, then you really have to nail the writing, and you really have to nail the acting, and you really have to nail the directing, because you don't have that crutch of, oh, it's a Captain America movie, I'm going to go see this. This looks great. Or, it's Chris Hemsworth, I love him. Or it's Chris Evans, I love him.
Right.
So I think and I don't think, and it's not that I don't think they can do this. I think they can. I just think they need to really concentrate on story and their director choices, and not get carried away with, we're Marvel and we can make anything and people will see it.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about all of that. But like you said, so far they've done an excellent job. I mean, just this past year we had Black Panther and the first Infinity War, and both of those were strong entries into their pantheon. So
it'll be interesting to see how people react to Captain Marvel. You know, I mean,
absolutely.
And I think they'll obviously react very well to it.
Sure.
But since it's not as core to the MCU as some of those other movies, I'll be sort of interested to see what, it's a female-led movie. It's going to have some of these secondary characters. I'll be real interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll be real interested in seeing how things go when the first of that core cast of actors decides to move on. When we officially know that we're never going to see Robert Downey Jr. in another film, or we're never going to see Chris Evans in another film, like that'll be interesting to me.
Yep. And speaking of being careful and making choices, there are finally, after all these months and months of us openly wondering about it, there are finally some rumored directors for the distant future film Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
All right, man. That's super exciting, because we can finally get this train rolling and see where things are going to go.
Yeah, so first of all, let me just throw a little cold water on that and reiterate that it isn't expected to shoot until 2021 at this point.
Oh my God.
which I think we knew, but Disney has now, I want to be careful with this, because this is a rumor, and so much movie news is based on rumor, but we're going to go with, maybe they're just throwing this out there to see how people react. Apparently, Disney and Marvel have been talking with directors, and the rumors are that their top choices are Dee Reese, nothing.
Nope.
Michelle Maxwell McLaren, nothing.
No clue.
And S.J. Clarkson,
what?
nothing.
No.
So Dee Reese is, these are all female directors. Dee Reese is her only credit that I recognize was Mudbound, which was a movie made for Netflix that I did not see, but it did get a lot of critical acclaim. I've actually had it recommended to me. I'm sure I'll check it out at some point.
Well, if it went straight to Netflix, that there's always going to be an asterisk over how good it actually was.
Possibly, sure.
Good movies go to theaters.
That's fair. It may have had a limited release, but it certainly wasn't a wide release. The other two, I won't bore you with it, but just they've done tons and tons of television, and high quality television as far as networks go. A lot of HBO stuff in there, a lot of AMC. Michelle Maxwell McLaren and S.J. Clarkson both, either or both of them have done Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, several of the TV shows, but not really a lot in features. So I don't want to overreact to a rumor, which may not even be true, and then hammer Disney over something that they're not really guilty of. But if this is the case, it kind of feels a little pandery to me for them to come out and just say, oh, we're progressive and we're going to only offer this to female directors, which is great if they're qualified for it.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. If they fired a director over offensive jokes he made on Twitter years before he ever started working for them, and then they immediately turn around and hire a female director who has never directed a feature film to pick up one of the most expensive and successful franchises in their entire Marvel universe. I mean, I definitely think that there's a political statement being made there.
And really, my other point on this is less about the gender part of it. Let's just throw that aside.
Yeah.
The other thing here is that these are not powerful directors. They're not powerful feature film directors. So it feels like to me, like when we speculated before, Disney, I think we talked about they would maybe go one of two ways. They would either pick a really powerful, popular director who they knew could step right in, handle the personalities, professionally deal with all the crap that's going to come with everything that's happened with this production so far, or they could get someone where they say, hey, you know what? We imbue you with the power to direct this movie. We choose you, and you just basically got to have to do what we tell you to do.
Right.
You know, you're going to direct this script. You're not going to change this script.
Yes.
And you can't do that unless you have someone who's trying to, punch above their weight a little bit.
Yeah. Someone who's trying to make that breakthrough from television to feature films.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it definitely sounds like that's probably what's happening here.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that we're starting to see some names.
Yeah.
And I hope soon that either those names are confirmed or that maybe Disney will take that as an opportunity to say, okay, if it's not true, come out and say, okay, here are the actual people that we're talking about here.
Right.
And hopefully they will have some, some varied, people in their pool of choices.
Well, I mean, if these really are the picks, then it makes you wonder, did they reach out to every A-list director that they have a relationship with, and every single one of them took a pass on that? Because that would not surprise me at all. I mean, that's a bad situation to walk into when you're being told, hey, we've already fired a director, but we want to use his script in kind of a hypocritical move.
Yeah.
And we want you to direct that script. We don't want you to come in and, basically you're just mopping up a mess that we've created. There's so few A-list directors that would ever do that. And the last one who did do that, as we've mentioned, it was Ron Howard with the Solo movie, and that blew up in everyone's face. That did not help him in any way.
Yeah.
I'm sure he regrets making that decision.
And think about how this works with the cast. I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard stories about how a lot of these actors are on the set, but I'm sure it's friendly and fun and great. But I just feel like, you're gonna want someone in that role for this movie that is gonna enter the room that already has some weight and respect to them.
Yeah.
Because of the hard situation. We know Dave Bautista has been shooting his mouth off a lot. He's very upset about this. Hopefully he would just sort of be a professional and move forward with it, but I kind of don't get the feeling he would be like that.
Well, I mean, that we can kind of say that for the entire cast. They're all professionals. They're all very, very good at what they do, and I'm sure that they're going to work their butts off for whoever the new director is. But I mean, these are not actors who are on the low levels, right? Like these are actors who they're very, very busy. They have a lot of stuff going on. They're working with very, very good directors. They're not going to suffer fools lightly, Like a director needs to come in and really know what they're doing from the first day, or the whole film is going to suffer for the entire time it's being shot.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like that these directors can't handle that, because while they do have a lot of television credits, it's not like they're shooting a weekend special. They've done tons of HBO stuff. They've done tons of big network stuff, cable network streaming. So they know pressure. They know how hard it is. They know what dedication it takes. I just feel like it's different when you're doing a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, which is undoubtedly going to be one of the most anticipated movies of that year.
Yeah, I mean, especially anticipated because of the stuff that's happened around it.
Yeah.
People are going to be extra critical of it. But you make a good point, and we should probably drive this home, that the opportunity for a female director to break into making big budget, major Hollywood summer release films, that's always a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal when Patty Jenkins got the opportunity to do that with Wonder Woman. She knocked it out of the park.
Right.
One of these women will most likely do the same thing. Fingers crossed.
Sure.
Regardless, that's always a good thing. And Hollywood should and clearly are making strides to try to include more women in that level.
It's a conversation we wouldn't even be having to have this conversation if it wasn't for all the stuff that had happened with Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people who get a shot to do something that they haven't done before, that's the industry. We talked about it with Peter Jackson. He'd done features before, but he suddenly was doing Lord of the Rings. No one was upset about that. So obviously I don't want to crap on any of those women getting a chance to do that. It's from the very bottom rung of the film industry all the way to the top. That's how it works. When you're breaking into production and you're a production assistant, I had this experience. When I was a production assistant, they gave me a credit to work as a production coordinator, and I just took the same pay as I did as a production assistant, but I filled the coordinator role. That's how you move up.
Yeah.
So,
and Disney's done a lot of this lately. When their first couple phases of the Marvel movies, they were always casting hiring really well-known directors, and it was brilliant. It worked out phenomenally well for them. They've sort of drifted away from that, so we get a lot of films directed by people who, it's sometimes surprising how they happen to land that particular film, but it's worked out really well for them. So it'll probably work out well in this situation too.
I'm sure. All right, 30 seconds on the new Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie.
That's already too much.
Apparently, child Bruce Wayne is going to show up in this movie. Again, they have all these elements that are meant to draw me into wanting to see this. The Scorsese involvement, the gritty sort of 80s turn on it, and I like Joaquin Phoenix, but then everything I see afterwards makes me run away.
So I don't like prequels, right? I dislike prequels enormously because I don't care about what happened before the thing I care about, right? I don't care about the Joker before there was Batman, right? The Joker is great as a villain of Batman. The Joker on his own is ludicrous. I don't care, right? So they realize that to some degree, and they're like, well, we've got to give the audience Batman. So the only way to make that work, I guess, is to have Kid Batman.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Oh my God.
I know.
This film, everything about this, like you said, everything about it as the individual elements seems like it should be drawing us in. But in reality, every new piece just makes it seem like more and more of a train wreck.
Yeah. All right, that was way more than 30 seconds, and that's way more than it deserves at this point. Why don't you tell us about a little bit of Bohemian Rhapsody news?
Well, this is also probably just worth a 30-second note.
Sure.
But I didn't know this. It caught me off guard. Mike Myers. Michael Myers murders people.
Yes.
Mike Myers delights us.
Hasn't murdered anyone yet.
Yes, he's in the new Bohemian Rhapsody movie.
Did not know that.
Which, little context for that, he is the star of Wayne's World. The first Wayne's World has, one of the most famous musical moments in film history is probably when Wayne and his buddies are driving in their little car and they start singing along to Bohemian Rhapsody. It was a huge kind of cultural moment. The world really, really embraced that. I would say an entirely new generation of Queen fans were born.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from that moment. So I think it's a really nice touch that he's now given this little role in Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a totally dramatic role, which he's done before. He's done a few dramatic turns.
Yeah.
But comments from the cast have said that despite it being a fairly small role, he came in dead serious, and they all knew him, of course, from his many roles, but chiefly for Wayne's World as well. And so they were all kind of excited to meet him and see how it would go. And they all knew that whole sequence is in the movie because he's a big Queen fan. So I don't know. It was just kind of a nice story to hear about that. And like I said, I had no idea that he was in the movie. He's wearing a lot of makeup, as Mike Myers always seems to do now. Yeah. I think he's kind of uncomfortable just being himself.
Yeah.
He's actually in the trailer if you go back and watch it.
Really?
Yeah, he plays a record executive, and in the trailer he makes some crack about this song being over 6 bloody minutes, and then
okay.
Rami Malek has like a little comeback jab for him, but it turns out that's Mike Myers.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good catch. We'll definitely be checking that one out and talking about it on the show, guaranteed, because we are both pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, a lot of buzz for that movie going into the award season as well.
All right, after a quick break, we're going to come back with some development news. All right, time for some development news. One of our favorites, George Miller, who directed one of our favorites, Mad Max Fury Road. We have been having so much excitement for a sequel to that movie because we both were huge fans of it. Unfortunately, apparently George Miller is putting his plans to do multiple sequels of Mad Max Fury Road on hold to direct something called 3,000 Years of Longing, which stars Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton. Nothing really known about the plot other than, nothing's known about the plot, but apparently the property is garnering a lot of excitement in Hollywood. People are trying to acquire it pretty quickly, and it's going to put Fury Road sequels off for at least a few years. So reaction to that besides sadness? Yeah,
it is pretty sad. The last we heard about the Fury Road sequels was they were still tangled up in legal limbo. George Miller has disagreements with the studio that released the film over profits and how much everyone got paid. And I think his contention is that they sort of presented the numbers in such a way so as to imply that the movie made less than it actually made, so that they could get out of paying certain bonuses that were due to him and possibly the cast. That led to a lawsuit, and so everything is sort of still up in the air. So it sounds like he doesn't see that getting resolved anytime soon, has decided to move on with other projects. That to me is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, Fury Road, such a great movie, opened so many doors to move forward with Tom Hardy as Mad Max. And I don't know. It's a part of me is excited to see what else Miller wants to make. You know, that's a strong cast. Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. That's compelling on its own.
Yep.
I just, man.
It's just disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in his, late 70s, early 80s?
Yeah.
So much like with Ridley, we're like, all right, let's get to the next thing here and not do the whole 3 years per movie thing.
Yeah, you don't really have that option for too long.
Yeah. All right, next one up. So this one I think is pretty interesting. Apparently in a fit of insurance, basically, Disney, as insurance for whether Star Wars or the Marvel universe begins to flounder, fat chance of that,
right,
is considering doing a reboot of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, which there are I think 17 of those at this point.
Yes, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I think it might be 16, but I think it might be 17. So many movies, just so many, and so many bad ones.
Yeah, too many movies.
And it seems so. For a while, all the remakes and the sequels and the reboots, it was just like, okay, that makes sense. And now in the last several years, it's one of those things where I look around and I say, who is asking for this? The original franchise hasn't gone away yet. And we're already talking about rebooting this one. And outside of the first movie, which was fantastic, after that, it just really went off a cliff. And they're considering rebooting it again, apparently, because I guess they're just trying to... They're trying to prepare just in case something goes wrong with these other franchises, which is highly, highly doubtful.
I mean, it's a bit of a killing stroke, right? They're just looking at every other studio and saying, we're just dominating. We have so many unending franchises that we can just keep just raking in the money from. And, here's this other one that was our biggest franchise for nearly 10 years. Let's just reboot it and just wipe everyone else out.
Yeah.
That's honestly what it feels like to me.
I mean, I give them credit for not resting on their laurels. We've talked about that before with Disney Marvel. They are great at putting their foot on the throat of the competition and just pushing down as hard as possible.
So, the obvious question here is you can't do Pirates of the Caribbean without a brilliant actor playing Jack Sparrow. Yep. Has there been any talk about who that might be?
There is no talk yet. We are left to cast it on our own.
Go on.
So I thought about this long and hard. I came up with one name, but admittedly, I know he's already much older for this role. And I think maybe when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about it through the lens of the Johnny Depp Jack Sparrow.
Right.
I feel like Robert Downey Jr. could do that role really well.
I thought for sure you were going to say Keith Richards.
except that maybe RDJ might play it a little bit similar the way that Johnny Depp did. I'm far more intrigued by your suggestion that you threw out.
Yeah, so my thinking was maybe Benedict Cumberbatch. He's an actor who's super hot right now, and we've seen him play a lot of kind of buckle down or straight ahead roles, but some of the characters have a hint of crazy in them. His version of Sherlock has it. You get a little tiny taste of that in his Doctor Strange character. So I think somewhere lurking in the background of his acting repertoire is just a crazy ass Johnny Depp level character.
Sure.
And I would love to see him, put on the 16 layers of pirate costume that Jack Sparrow parades around in and see what version of that character he could bring us.
Love to see a Russell Crowe come in as a villain in that franchise.
That would be
maybe.
Fantastic. That's perfect.
He's in that part of his career now where he's not doing a lot of leading roles, but I think he could play the villain in pretty much anything a creative director come up with.
Yeah. The real catch for them making this successful is the X factor of who the director is.
Yeah,
that
always.
first trilogy, especially that first film, were as excellent as it was because of Gore Verbinski. Like, you could not have crafted together a better director than the one that they hired for that. And so, who's the next Gore Verbinski? I have no clue.
Yeah. So that's an interesting development. It's all speculative at this point, but I really, again, I didn't realize there was a thirst for this, so I get where they're coming from. Terrence, why don't you tell us a little bit about some Star Wars cinematic universe news?
Yeah, so bad news for people who are really, really in love with the Star Wars universe. It looks like all plans for the standalone Boba Fett movie are dead.
Yeah.
It should be pointed out that that was never officially announced by Disney,
right.
But the leaks among the people who were actively working on development of that project made it pretty clear that it was happening with Lucasfilms. And they've just decided to shut all that down, which is, I think, a wise move.
Yeah.
It was clear that the attempts to just mine the Star Wars universe with the assumption that everyone would go see everything didn't really pan out the way Disney had hoped. That they need to refocus their attentions and make sure that they have a strong core film franchise that works and people are excited about before you start trying to do these standalone spin-off films.
Yeah, I'm sure they thought, well, if the standalone for Han Solo didn't work, then none of these will work.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, they've got this big, expensive streaming service that they're going to be launching. They've got, from the looks of it, a big budget A-list Star Wars TV series that's going to be showing on that streaming service. I think speculation might lead us to conclude that might be where they start putting these standalone films if they decide to start doing them again.
Sure.
And at this point, I have no idea if they're going to do any more. I would be shocked if they did another solo movie. But
boy, I can't imagine after that wreck.
Yeah, I mean, they lost money. Like, Disney lost money on a Star Wars movie. That's insanity.
Yeah, it does feel like the Boba Fett movie would be a perfect addition for the streaming, though, like we talked about. So they can just they don't have to rip this apart and put it to death. They can just kind of table it and see how it goes in 2019 with the release of the streaming. And then, 2021, 2022, few years in the future, after they know how the streaming service is going, that seems like it could be some excellent streaming content for them. And then maybe they'll just focus on the theatrical releases. They'll just focus on the core, series of movies rather than messing with these. Because I'm really curious to see in the future, though, how it plays out, whether Disney feels like, okay, Solo was... It didn't work out the way we wanted to, but it's because of these circumstances. And man, we just need to refresh and do this again. Not necessarily with Solo, but with another standalone project. Or if they're just going to say, okay, it's the concept of the standalone. It worked fine with Rogue One, but for whatever reason, and the Han Solo one didn't resonate, and let's just put this thing to bed or save it for streaming.
Right. Let me bounce this off you. That Star Wars TV series is called The Mandalorian. The Mandalorians are the people of which Boba Fett is one of them. So there's an entire new Star Wars TV series that's going to be based on a person who dresses like and behaves like Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. They've killed the Boba Fett standalone movie. Why didn't they just make the TV series about Boba Fett?
It's almost like they figured that out as things progressed.
Yeah, that seems something that they should have put two and two together on before they started shooting that show and kill two birds with one stone.
I hope that the legacy of Solo is that when we look back, it'll be the time where they figured out, okay, we can't just release any Star Wars thing and expect it to be a $1 billion win.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Right.
All right, we want to hit one more piece of development news before we leave here. Terrence and I are Aaron Sorkin fans from way back in the day, so Terrence is going to talk a little bit about a new project for him.
Right. So Aaron Sorkin is going to direct a film. He's going to direct...
I guess we should say who he is first.
Fair enough. So
West Wing.
Right. Aaron Sorkin is most famously a screenwriter, a playwright turned screenwriter. And he's... Yeah, if you know him from anything, you probably know him from his work in television, which is shows like The West Wing and more recently Newsroom. But he's also had a lot of success writing screenplays for films. The most famous of which is A Few Good Men, right? A Few Good Men, right. I was blanking on the name of that for a second. That was where he really really stepped to the forefront. And anyway, so he had written a screenplay for a movie that for a while Steven Spielberg was attached to direct, and that was called Trial of the Chicago 7. And he, over the course of this film going through its production cycle, Spielberg eventually just walked away from it. No telling what the reason was for that. Big time directors are attached to movies for periods of time, and then they leave them because of scheduling difficulties, or they just lose interest in the project, or it goes in a direction they're not happy with. It almost never is any indication that something is bad. It's just simply how the way Hollywood works. So Aaron Sorkin, rather than waiting around to get another big name director attached, he just stepped up and said, I'd like to direct this. So he's going to be directing from a screenplay that he's written.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. I don't know too much about it. It's based on a real event, a trial in 1969 by the federal government to try these 7 men for conspiracy due to some sort of political activism involving the Democratic National Convention. I'm sure it's a really famous historical thing that a lot of our listeners instantly know what the reference is. And, I just sadly don't know what it's about, but it seems like it's in the perfect wheelhouse for Sorkin. He loves politics. He loves news.
Yep.
He loves courtroom dramas. This is all 3 of those things rolled into one. I'm super excited about this film. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Just for a couple more recent entries for him, just for anyone who out there may not be super familiar with his work, he also wrote The Social Network.
Yes.
And Moneyball. And he wrote that Steve Jobs movie from 2015. Yeah, there was that one. And of course, we mentioned The West Wing, but he also did the Newsroom for HBO several years back, which was just a brilliant concept for a television show.
Such a good concept.
That needs to be happening now.
Yes.
Oh man, it would be great if it was happening now, but it's not, sadly.
I don't need them to bring back those characters. I don't need them to even bring back Aaron Sorkin, but somebody somewhere should take the concept of that show and revive it, because it had never been done before. It was brilliant. It worked so well. It's a shame that it's just languishing out there. I guarantee you at some point, someone who doesn't have the juice yet as a writer, but who loved that show will revive that concept in the future sometime. It's just too good not to use.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. That's all we got for this episode. Stick around. Check back in a couple of days for another single topic standalone episode. But that's all we have for this one. We hope you guys enjoyed it. You can always hit us up on Twitter @TechBloodPod and give us suggestions for topics. Any questions you might have, we'll kick anything around, and we will see you on the next one.